Thank you, Rachel. Yes, clearly a lot riding on the outcome of the runoff, not just for France and the European Union, but also for the United States. Let's bring in Dominic Thomas, live from Paris. He's the chair of French Studies at the University of California in Los Angeles and a specialist on European politics and society. Before talking about the United States and EU, I just want to get your take on these two candidates. Very different, not just in their personalities, but also in their vision. So what have the French voters said? What is the message here by electing or by these two being the front runners right now?
Thank you. There are so many different messages that were communicated in this vote. And what's so interesting about the French system is that one doesn't always vote for a candidate, but against a particular candidate and vision. And we saw here in the 4 candidates that were left, 3 of them did not represent mainstream political parties. And as we've repeatedly said, no mainstream party ends up being in the second round. What people are ultimately deciding is not so much on specific policy issues, but on the question of a vision for France. Now, obviously, Macron comes with a whole range of issues and so on, but the whole point of countering Le Pen isn't just countering somebody whose policy agendas are organized around border control, protectionism, nationalism, the kinds of questions that shaped the US election and the Brexit vote. This is also about removing from the political landscape a political party that has deep roots in fascism, deep roots in anti-Semitic kinds of comments and so on. And even though Marine Le Pen has tried to clean up the image of that party, it remains, and the far right remains, an extremely problematic political presence in France today. Now, what of course Marine Le Pen addresses and the kinds of fault lines that she has exploited in society have been absolutely crucial in this election, because they do have to do with globalization, and they do have to do with the partial failure of the European Union to deal with large segments of European populations that are being left behind by globalization. And the responsibility of the new president, if it is Emmanuel Macron, is finally going to try and find solutions to deal with those issues, which the current political establishment has been unable to do.
So, Dominic, how would a Macron or Le Pen victory, what would it mean in terms of relations with the United States? I should add, Donald Trump expressed support for Marine Le Pen, but stopped short of a full endorsement.
Right. Well, this is the thing, is that, between the sort of the Brexit campaign, initially, led by the United Kingdom Independent Party and then taken over by elements of the Conservative Party, is that if one draws a kind of Venn diagram between the sort of policies of Le Pen, the protectionist policies, the Make France Great Again, if you sort of line up all those statements, you might not automatically know whether what you were talking about, Brexit, Trump, or Marine Le Pen. So it's clear that that kind of narrow, nationalistic, protectionist, closed down sort of vision of the world correlates with areas of the world in which those issues have sort of resonated around similar kinds of things. We talked about the Rust Belt vote in the United States. We've looked at the sort of demographics of Brexit voting and so on, and there are a lot of points of correlation. But this particular vision of the world and the impact that it has on a European country, like France, stand to be very dramatic. And I really believe that Emmanuel Macron will make it through. But just because there is this sort of, support and pact to eliminate Marine Le Pen, does not mean that the kinds of issues that both Mélenchon on the extreme left was also touching upon and Marine Le Pen will go away. Her support continues to grow. When her father made it through in 2002, he had just over 4 million votes, and she's right around 7 million votes. So her influence continues to grow, and what's really going to be telling are going to be the parliamentary elections that are going to take place at the beginning of the month of June. So the French will be faced with another period of double rounds of 2 rounds of voting to determine the infrastructure of the new parliament. And of course, Emmanuel Macron will be elected potentially president, but a president who does not have a political party. This leaves a lot of uncertainty as we go forward.
There was so much concern after Brexit and also after Donald Trump's win here in the United States about the populist movement. Well, we saw right-wing candidates rejected in Austria. We saw them rejected in the Netherlands. So my question to you is, could France also reject it?
Well, there's rejection and there's not winning. Wilders in the Netherlands picked up more support. He has more seats in the Dutch parliament than he had before. But of course, he was not able to garner the amount of support that would allow him to form a cabinet or to be an obvious candidate for prime minister. And the fact that he's being excluded from the Rutte cabinet is also problematic to the extent that a substantial portion of voters did support this candidate. So Marine Le Pen being excluded from the political order, as problematic as a platform is, doesn't do anything to breed the sort of ground between what is perceived as a kind of establishment elite and the people, which is the sort of the ultimate definition, of populism here. But what we're also seeing in France is this far left candidate, Mélenchon, who also ran an independent movement that's not really a political party yet, and scored 3 times better than the Labour Party, than the Socialists. And so there's been a kind of complete dismantling of the traditional left here, something that we're seeing also in the United Kingdom, where the Labour Party is in disarray, and certainly with the Democratic Party in the United States that is struggling to redefine its identity. And this is paving the way for a new kind of centrist politics, which Emmanuel Macron represents. And his movement forward, En Marche, is likely to turn into a new political configuration that will be something like a democratic party that will seek to build alliances across the right and the left, and could potentially reshape politics for the years to come.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dominic Thomas, live for us in Paris. And France, of course, heads back to the polls on May 7th, and a lot of people will be watching the outcome.